Hey, what's up, guys? Isaiah from Hot Tag Wrestling, and today we are talking about WWE's newest PLE, Bad Blood. What I thought was a pretty entertaining show. By no means the best WWE PLE of the year, but some pretty solid stuff on here. One match of the year contender that will easily be in the discussion for best WWE match at the end of the year. But other than that, a lot of good stuff, but not great. It's a show that peaked super high in the beginning and then fell off pretty quick and could never really recover its footing after that. What we're going to be doing, we're going to be going through match by match. I'm going to give you my review, my thoughts on what happened, what went well, what went wrong, and I'm going to give you my personal star rating for each match. But with that said, let's go ahead and get into it with our first match. So first we're going to start out with the first match on the card and what easily stole the show, by far the best match on the card, CM Punk versus Drew McIntyre, the rubber mats inside Hell in a Cell. And for this match, I'm sort of going to give it a compliment sandwich, which means I start with a compliment, then give some criticism, and then end with compliments. Because really, there was a lot more to love about this match than there was to dislike. There was almost nothing to dislike. It was such a fantastic match, and the structure of the match was great in the way that it not only incorporated great action but also story beats from the past. But unlike their past matches, like their match at SummerSlam, it wasn't all about the story. They were able to incorporate the story, but really the overall purpose of the match was to show violence and beautiful pro wrestling violence between these guys. And it did such a great job doing that by incorporating, one of the spots was as soon as CM Punk started bleeding, Drew started going for near falls, and vice versa. Once Drew started bleeding, Punk started going for falls. But prior to that, they didn't try pins because they said in the story leading up, they wanted to make each other bleed. And now that they've accomplished that, they can go for the pins. Those little ways of incorporating the story beats that we've been working with for 6 to 10 months at this point was just fabulous, and not letting it get in the way of the action was great. So in terms of just the storytelling, the way they incorporated the story into the match, I feel like it would easily be a 5-star match. But there are some things detracting from it. Firstly, minor complaint, and this might just be a wrestling nerd purist like me overly analyzing something, but I feel like they didn't really use Hell in a Cell as a stipulation effectively enough. A lot of the stuff they did in here was just a hardcore match, pretty much. I can only really think of 2 spots that incorporated the cell. One when I think it was one of the two just bashing the other one's head. I think it was Punk bashing Drew's head off the cage, and the other one was Drew lawn darting Punk into the cage. And those were really the only 2 spots. Other than that, it was wrench spots and table spots and, chair shots, things like that to get over the violence. But Hell in the Cell itself wasn't the focus, which, you're sort of trying to reintroduce the stipulation to the audience, moving away from the branded PLEs and just trying to make it a normal match stipulation that could occur at any time. So, in my opinion, I thought they should have better utilized the actual cage as a weapon. But that's a minor criticism. One of the bigger complaints I have is the action and the moves and the spots didn't always look that crisp. When they were getting hit with weapons, sure, that looked great, but a lot of times the punches, the kicks, and CM Punk's rising knees in particular were for some reason something that stuck out in my head of things that just didn't look like they connected or didn't really look that clean. And in a match like this, not looking clean can be a good thing, like I'll talk about in a minute, but when it functions to draw the audience out of the match by showing moves not connecting, it really detracts more than anything. But a lot of stuff in this match, the sort of unevenness and the lack of production made it to its benefit. And though I could really see the strings at some points, when Drew got a near fall off a Claymore, but they had set up a table earlier and they hadn't yet done a table spot, I easily knew that he was going to kick out, or Punk was going to kick out, and this wasn't the end of the match. I could see the strings a little bit, but ultimately, a lot of the brutality felt genuine and improvised. And in a street fight kind of match like that, that improvisation is super important to making it really feel authentic and really feel like a real fight. And there were some absolutely brutal spots in this match. One that happened early on is McIntyre just like stomped Punk's head on the steel steps, and commentary didn't sell it and the crowd didn't really pop for it, but it looked absolutely brutal. In the same with like Drew taking a toolbox to the head, air raid crash on the steps, and the most brutal spot of this match, and maybe one of the most brutal spots that I've seen in a long time in a match, other than some of the stuff in Page versus Strickland, was Drew went for a Claymore and Punk moved out of the way, so Drew sort of just caught his back on the edge of the stairs, and it just looked brutal. The match really felt out of control and had an energy and a violence that you don't normally see in WWE productions. And coming so close after Page versus Strickland in AEW had this crazy brutal cage match, they sort of had these expectations from a lot of fans who enjoy both products like myself to live up to, and I think they just did such an amazing job of it. It did pretty much 3 goals at once. It ended the feud in the perfect way. It made both wrestlers look like badasses, and it got fans excited to see more Hell in a Cell matches in the future. And marrying all of those 3 things together is such a difficult task to do, and they accomplished it in such a beautiful way. For me, this match is now up there with Bayley versus Io Sky as being one of my favorite WWE matches of the year, and I actually gave it the exact same star rating I did that match. 4.5 stars. Absolutely fantastic match. Just those minor criticisms, but really they don't ruin your viewing experience at all. Best match of the pay-per-view, best match I've seen from WWE since WrestleMania. So next up was Bayley versus Nia Jax for the Women's Championship, and I wasn't a huge fan of this match. I feel like it was pretty sloppily worked and didn't really tell a great story, or another way of looking at it, it didn't tell a different story from the match they had at SummerSlam, which if you're going to have a follow-up, a sequel match, is something that you need to have. So a lot of people have been giving Nia credit for her most recent singles run in WWE after making the return, but I don't really see it. I'm not a fan of Nia Jax, and I'm not sure if that's based on her current work, because I haven't really seen anything recently that I've been impressed with, or if I'm letting my past judgments sort of influence what I see now. I'm not really sure, but I don't really like seeing her wrestle, and not so much from the perspective now that I feel like she's going to injure someone. I just don't think she's to the level of someone like a Bayley. And Nia Jax in this match, I would say, was equally parts good and equally parts bad. Like, she had some big power spots that legitimately looked awesome. Like, some of the best stuff I've seen from her all year. They looked fantastic. But there were some things in this match that just looked terrible. Like, clear botches, not just timing issues, like huge botches. There was one move, and it's got to be the worst wrestling move I've seen all year, when Bayley had Nia up in a powerbomb position and Nia Hurricane Rana'd her, but it was just like Bayley dropping her and then doing a flip. It looked so bad. It looked so unbelievable, and even commentary were confused by it. If you not only confused the wrestling fans watching, but also the commentators who know what are happening in the match, and it's their job to make these kinds of things look good, if you fluster them, that's bad. I'll say Bayley, on the other hand, I love Bayley. I think she looked awesome in this match, and I think that even though there was a lot of spots, I would never necessarily attribute them to being Bayley's fault. A lot of botched spots, that is. I think she's up there with some of the best women's workers in WWE, up there with Io Sky and Bianca Belair. Not quite on the level of Rhea, which I'll talk about later. But I think she can always pull a big-time match out of people when the occasion calls for it. And she just really wasn't able to get that there today. It's a dichotomizing match because there's a lot to love and an equal amount to hate in the match. So I was planning on just shooting it straight down the middle and giving it 3 stars. But I'll have to say, even though some parts were objectively bad, I was entertained throughout. I was never going and looking at my phone or thinking about something else. I was always engaged with the match. So even if it was bad, I'll give it credit for that. So I'll throw an extra quarter star on. I'll give it 3.25 stars. Worst match on the card. Nothing irredeemable, just sloppy. Nothing you should go out of your way to see. Next up was a straight-up grudge match. Finn Balor versus Damian Priest. No titles on the line, just a blood feud coming to a head. I say blood feud, but it wasn't really a blood feud. It was just sort of a TV feud. And I've heard a lot of criticism for this match, saying it was like a Monday Night Raw match put on pay-per-view, and I don't really see that, because I liked this match a lot. I'm going to start by talking about things I didn't like and things that I thought detracted from the match before going into what I really, really liked about it, because I did think it was a very fun match. I was expecting them to take a very different structure than they did here. I was expecting Priest to look dominant throughout the match and then Finn to sort of find a Weasley cheaty way to come back and get his victory. And though he did cheat at some points, they really were sort of presented pretty much on the same level. Obviously, Priest looked like a dominant monster, but they didn't make Finn look like a weasel. They just made him look like a great wrestler. And that's what he is. He is a great wrestler. It was just a weird way to interpret the story, because the Judgment Day street trash are like these grubby little losers almost, who don't have a lot of wrestling skill and they get through by cheating. So it's weird to see this sort of switch. And I thought Finn's offense in the match was also sort of weird. Like, he would go from hitting power moves and strikes to a rest hold, to power moves and strikes to a rest hold. And it was just sort of stop, start throughout the match. And I wasn't the biggest fan of that. I thought they should have either built better and done all the chain wrestling and rest holds at the beginning before moving to the big moves, or just done big moves throughout. I would honestly prefer the second, just to do big moves throughout. Having said all that, though, I really did like this match. I thought it was hard hitting. I thought, like, maybe it's just because I was coming off the last match where stuff was so sloppy, but I thought every single move in this match looked snug, it looked like it connected, it looked effective, and it looked and sounded impactful. And that is just sort of the core basic tenet of pro wrestling. And maybe I'm giving them too much credit for that because I didn't see it in the first 2 matches, but I just really liked it. Priest really looked like a beast in this match, and this is the best match I've seen all year to really make Damian Priest look dominant, more so than anything he did during his championship run. This really made him look like a monster and made him look like someone who has the ability to be at the top of the card. And I feel like, overall I didn't love the structure or pace of this match necessarily, but in terms of action, I thought the action was all phenomenal. So I gave it 4 stars. That's higher than most people would probably give it, because it was a little bit short, a little bit TV, and the structure was a little bit wonky. But in terms of action, I thought it was solid throughout. Nothing really to complain with on that front. Next up was Rhea Ripley versus Liv Morgan, with Dominic Mysterio locked in a shark cage by ringside. And I'm going to start out this match review with a little bit of a hot take. I think Rhea Ripley is the single best wrestler in WWE, period. Bar none. I think she's better than Cody, better than Roman. I think she's better than Gunther, Sammy, Seth, whoever you want to throw out there. Because I think she has this ability to combine star power with in-ring action that not only looks realistic and brutal, but also so incredibly entertaining. whenever I watch a Rhea Ripley match, I have so much more fun than I do with any other match on the card. And though her matches aren't usually the best match of the card, I feel like that's because the stories that she's given and the opponents that she's given don't match up to her level. I feel like there's a handful of wrestlers who can match up to her, like Io, Bianca, Bayley, Charlotte Flair, but really in the Raw women's division especially, there's sort of just this chasm. There's Rhea, and then there's no one. Because Liv is a good wrestler, but she's an inconsistent wrestler. She can have really good matches or really bad matches, and her offense can look really good or really bad as well. And in this match, she had a lot of timing issues and a few botches. She didn't really impress me that much in this match, and the only times her offense looked good was because Rhea is such a great bumper. Like, she did a sunset flip on the outside into the barricade, and Rhea just sold it, like snapped her head onto the back of it. It looked phenomenal. And maybe I'm giving too much credit to Rhea there, and I'm not recognizing the things Liv is doing to hold up that end of the match. But really, everything good I saw in this match came from Rhea Ripley. And I thought this match was going to be on par with the last match in terms of action. It seemed to be heading in that direction into 4-star territory. And then the end happened. And this match had such a awful dog shit finish. I have trouble understanding how it got so bad. Because Raquel Rodriguez, Gonzalez, I don't really know what her name is. I know she had like one in NXT and then one on the main roster, and they swapped. But I genuinely don't know. And I've tried to figure, like, to remember, but they just get confused in my head, and I don't know what her last name is. I'm just going to say Raquel Rodriguez. She came out and she attacked Rhea Ripley and then threw her back in the ring, and the bell rang for a disqualification, and then she put Liv on top of Rhea to give Liv the pin, even though the match was already done. And not only that, she did all that in like full view of the ref, but the ref didn't call for the DQ right away. It came like 20 seconds after he had left the ring to go check on Dom, and I'll talk about Dom in a sec because I actually thought that spot was phenomenal. But not only was it a bad idea to book a DQ finish, the execution was just horrible execution, which can't be said about the Dominic Mysterio spot because that was phenomenal. So Dom was in the shark cage above. He ended up opening the door, and Rhea had given Liv a riptide on the outside and was bringing her back in, and Dom was like leaning forward to try to make sure she's okay. And he fell head first out of the shark cage. And I was watching this with my girlfriend, and in the moment when Dom fell out of the shark cage, we both thought that he was going to die, because he was going head first straight to the ground. But they had some sort of apparatus around his legs, some sort of chain that caught him at the last moment and was just hanging him there like a piñata. And then Rhea took a kendo stick and obviously went and beat the tar out of him. So that was a really scary but well executed spot. That's like the good kind of scary spots in wrestling. So I thought the action in the match was good, not great. The Dom spot was amazing. The ending was horrible. I give the match 3.5 stars. I feel like the ending really let down everything else they did in the match. And lastly, we have the main event, the Dream Team, the new Mega Powers, Cody Rhodes and Roman Reigns, taking off the new Bloodline, or as they called them on the show, the Bad Bloodline, which I thought was super creative and fun, Solo Sikoa and Jacob Fatu. And whenever I rate matches, I take into consideration both what happened before and what happened after the matches as well. So if there's some sort of storyline thing going on before or after, I usually take those into account. So we're going to start before the match actually started with the entrances. I thought Cody and Roman's entrances were goofy, dumb. Whenever they have live music playing, unless it's like a rock band, it always looks dumb. Marching band dancers never work for entrances. And apart from them on the other side, I thought Solo and Jacob Fatu's entrances were really indicative of the way this match was going to go. where a lot of pomp and circumstance surrounding it, and then they just get in the ring and stand around for a long time. And that's sort of the story of this match in my mind. A lot of pomp and circumstance and some big spots at the end, but a lot of nothing in between. And that's sort of the archetypal Bloodline / Roman Reigns match. Is like a super slow start with a lot of talking, a lot of standing around, looking at the crowd, soaking it in, really trying to build up the moments, but not a lot of wrestling. And I thought it was overall sort of boring as a result. Like, I didn't really love this match. It was a lot of standing around at the start, a lot of posturing from both teams. And they did, they started out and they started doing some chain wrestling and whatever, but then they just went into this extremely long, boring heat sequence, like a really boring heat sequence where Solo and Jacob were working over Cody Rhodes before making a hot tag to Roman. And it was so long. Like, it was a ridiculous... I don't understand why they thought it needed to be that long. Probably because these kinds of matches always have to reach the 25 or 30 minute mark in the minds of the bookers. But they don't. Like, they should be shorter and better. That's... Like, no one would complain if this match went 15 minutes instead of 25 and they just eliminated that incredibly long heat sequence. No one would complain. But after that, after Roman got the hot tag, it did start to pick up. Faster action, more big signature moves being hit. And the ending, which I thought was pretty cool, saw Jimmy Uso return, take out Tama Tonga Loa. Cody Rhodes did a splash off the top rope through a table to Jacob Fatu, and Roman Reigns speared Solo Sikoa to get the win. And I thought that everything that happened after the match, which I did say I included in my ratings, I thought that was all magic. Roman and Jimmy hugged. They left Cody in the ring with the championship. The Bloodline started attacking Cody, and Roman looked back and was like, I don't know, not my problem. I said I'd help him once, but Jimmy was like, come on, we got to go help him. So they went back and they helped him. And then The Rock returned at the end, and it was sort of a little, I don't know if symbolic is the right word, where it's just like he went 1, 2, 3 like that, but then we don't really know what that means. I've seen some speculation that that's referring to when he pinned Cody on WrestleMania Night 1, so now he's coming in to potentially collect his shot that he earned from that. Something like that, I don't know, but The Rock is now in the mix of this Bloodline storyline, which is heating up as we are going to Survivor Series, where we're potentially going to get OG Bloodline versus new Bad Bloodline. So it's a lot going on, and it left fans with a lot to be excited for. Even if the match wasn't great, everything that happened after the final bell was awesome. And the match was well worked enough, nothing exciting, fairly boring throughout, but there's nothing to really criticize in terms of work. They did a traditional tag build with a heat sequence that was too long, and then afterwards, once Roman got the hot tag, it did genuinely get exciting, and the action did get good. So overall, I gave it 3.5 stars. Boring beginning, pretty good ending, phenomenal after the bell. And those are my thoughts on WWE Bad Blood 2024. Let me know what you guys thought down below. Do you agree with my ratings? Do you think this was one of the better PLEs of the year? Or do you more align with a lot of the talk I've been hearing on the internet that it was a pretty boring mid-show? What do you guys think of CM Punk versus Drew? Is it the best Hell in a Cell match of all time? In my opinion, no, I don't think it is, but I think it was an absolutely phenomenal match. If you liked this video, please consider leaving a comment letting me know what you thought, subscribing, turning on notifications, or leaving a like from this video, because that sort of attention and that sort of connection does really help with a newer channel like myself. Thank you guys so much for watching. I've been Isaiah for Hot Tag Wrestling, and I'll see you next time.